Listeners, on today's virtual event, which is on a very profound subject of an appraisal, Kashmir's struggle for self-determination. I will begin today's proceedings by welcoming my first speaker, Mr. Altaf Wani. He is the chairman, Kashmir Institute of International Relations. He is a member of All Parties Hurriyat Conference, AGK chapter, and also a representative of Jammu Kashmir National Front. At present, he is serving as a representative World Muslim Congress at UN, Geneva, since 2015. So Mr. Wani will shed light on the role of Kashmiri youth in self-determination struggle. Sir, over to you.
Ma'am, I think he is not joined us.
No, I think unka, okay, maybe some connectivity issues are there. So, Sir, Mujahid Gilani Nabi Fai Saab, if we'll start with you, if that's all right.
You mean with me?
Yes, we can start
Okay.
with you. Okay.
No, that's up to you, inshallah. Just tell me.
Okay. Sayyid Ghulam Nabi Fai Saab is Secretary General of World Kashmir Awareness Forum. He also founded the Kashmiri American Council in the United States and carried out lobbying on behalf of Kashmiri diaspora for their freedom movement. Sir, you will be shedding light on late Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani's struggle for self-determination. Over to you.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. First of all, let me thank Ambassador Nadeem Riyaz Saab and you, Humaira Iqbal, for organizing this very important webinar. I am really honored to share the podium, though virtually, with three sons of the soil, Dr. Mujahid Gilani, whose family has become the symbol of sacrifice, and Altaf Wani Sahab, who has been mobilizing the global civil society for the last so many years. And obviously Dr. Chak, a scholar activist who know I from United Nations, New York to Washington to Qatar to Bosnia and elsewhere. But before expounding on the subject, I would like to share a few moments on the very concept of right to self-determination. All of us know that Article 1 of UN Charter has given this right to all the people of the world. Even the Article 1 of International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and Article 1 of International Covenant of Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, it states all peoples have the right to self-determination. Even the Atlantic Charter of August 14th of 1941 and Vienna Declaration of 1993 and Article 21/1 of African Charter on Human Rights, they all endorse the right to self-determination. But I would like to make it clear, when the people of Kashmir, when they demand the right to self-determination, they do not demand it only under the UN Charter or under the international covenants. They demand it under the 18 substantive resolutions of the Security Council. These resolutions of the Security Council, they are very unique. They are unique not because I'm saying so. They are unique because it has happened only once in the history of United Nations. What does that mean? That means when East Timor became independent, the solution to the problem was suggested by the United Nations, not by Indonesia. When Namibia got the freedom, the solution was suggested by United Nations, not by South Africa. But Kashmir is the only international conflict where the solution of the problem was suggested by the parties themselves. The people of Kashmir have the right to self-determination. It was suggested by Sir Kupplaswamy Iyengar, who was the Indian delegate to the United Nations. He spoke at the Security Council on January 15, 1948, and he said, whether Kashmir remains in India or accesses to Pakistan or joins the United Nations, it must be decided by the people of Kashmir. And that proposal was endorsed and accepted by the government of Pakistan. Then something very unique happened, very interesting happened, because during the debate at the Security Council, a person no less important than the President of the United States, President Harry Truman, he instructed his ambassador to the United Nations, Ambassador Warren Austin. The instructions were very simple: to initiate a resolution on Kashmir at the Security Council. So United States of America was not only the co-sponsor of the resolution, United States was the co-author of the resolution number 47, which was adopted on April 21st of 1948. And that is the resolution, ladies and gentlemen, which has given the right to self-determination to the people of Kashmir. Then something very strange happened. One fine morning, India started saying, because 7 decades have passed since the United Nations resolutions were adopted by the Security Council. So these resolutions have become obsolete and the Kashmir issue has become out of date. India needs to understand that mere passage of time, it cannot alter the fact that these resolutions of the Security Council over Kashmir have remained unimplemented. And United Nations resolution can never be obsolete. And they can never be taken by the events or changed by the circumstances. Let me give you one example. If the mere passage of time can extinguish international agreements, then you tell me, ladies and gentlemen, that United Nations Charter can face the same difficulty and the UN resolution on Kashmir, because UN Charter was adopted 3 years earlier than UN resolutions on Kashmir. If non-implementation of the resolution can make the resolution obsolete, I don't need to tell you, talk to the people of Kashmir, that Geneva Convention in 20th century in many parts of the world, including India, it is facing the same fate as the UN resolution on Kashmir. Now coming back to the Sayyid Ali Gilani, may Allah bless his soul. He was the symbol of defiance, and he was the firm believer of the right to self-determination of the people of Kashmir. He was a fascinating personality. He was not only an intellectual and deep thinker, ladies and gentlemen, he was an articulate scholar. And in fact, I have listened to so many scholars, not only in Kashmir and in Pakistan, in Turkey and elsewhere. They all said that Gilani Sahab was an institution by himself. I'm sure you people know Mahatma Gandhi has said about Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Mahatma Gandhi, who did not really like Jinnah, but he was forced and compelled by the circumstances to speak the truth. He said, Mr. Jinnah is incorruptible. No power on earth can buy Mr. Jinnah. Ladies and gentlemen, what an honor for the people of Kashmir. That exactly can be said about Sayyid Ali Gilani. Not because some Kashmiri has told me that, not because some Pakistani leader has told me that. Ladies and gentlemen, you know who has told me that? Dr. Samir Kaul. Dr. Samir Kaul is an internationally known cardiologist based in New Delhi. Dr. Samir Kaul is a Kashmiri, but he's not a Muslim. He's a Pandit, he's a Hindu. He gave an interview to Rediff.com in 2009, ladies and gentlemen. And he said, I quote, Gilani Sahab has become incorruptible. Then he said, a Kashmiri Pandit. He said 80% of the people of Kashmir, not Muslims of Kashmir, these are his words. 80% of the people of Kashmir, they respect Gilani Sahab, these are his words, because he is not corrupt. Then what a beautiful statement he made that really makes me proud. He said, Gilani Sahab is sincere and honest to his people. Ladies and gentlemen, Gilani Sahab never compromised. I am sure you have heard the name of President General Parvez Musharraf. He had 3 hours meeting with Sayyid Ali Gilani in embassy of Pakistan in New Delhi. He told him that I have 4-point formula, can you accept it? Gilani Sahab told him, you want to sideline the United Nations resolution to give the out-of-box solution. But you tell me, for God's sake, these 4-point formula, it goes again in the basic principle of right to self-determination, and I will be the last person to accept that. He was not talking to some ordinary person, a person on the street. He was talking not only to the president of Pakistan, he was talking to the chief of army of Pakistan. And secondly, Gilani Sahab, it is Washington Post, in fact, reporting that Gilani said always no to the talks with India. Then Washington Post said, because Mr. Gilani said, I don't trust India. That's exactly what Gilani Sahab told me, Sardar Abdul Qayyum Khan, may Allah bless his soul, Dr. Ayub Thakur, may Allah bless his soul, Ghulam Ahmad Safi, Dr. Ghulam Nabi Mir, and many others. We met him in Minna during the Hajj. हमने एक ही सवाल पूछा, उर्दू में बात हो रही थी, आप हिंदुस्तान के साथ बात क्यों नहीं करना चाहते? Why don't you want to talk to India? Subhanallah, what a beautiful answer which I conveyed to the government of India. He said, I am ready to talk to India. Let India tell me, baat kis baat par karni hai? These are his words. Then he said, if India agrees on 4 points, number 1, India has to accept Kashmir as a dispute. India has to define the parameters of talks. India had to make talks time-bound, and Kashmiri should be the part of the talks. The vision of Gilani Sahab. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, the vision of Gilani Sahab was very clear. He said it loud and clear that I believe that Kashmir should become the part of Pakistan. The BBC said it the best. BBC quoted Dr. Sumatra Bose. He's an Indian scholar. He teaches at London School of Economics. Dr. Sumatra Cole says, I met Sayyid Ali Gilani in Senegal. It is reported by the BBC. He told me, I'm a proud Kashmiri, but my ideology is Pakistan. Again, when we met Sayyid Ali Gilani Sahab in Hajj at another occasion, a person like Nawab Dada Nasrullah Khan, may Allah bless his soul. Sardar Abdul Qayyum Khan was also there at that time, Professor Khurshid and Qazi Hussain Ahmad. Nawab Dada asked Gilani Sahab, what is your philosophy about the accession to Pakistan? Again in Minna, again during the Hajj, Gilani Sahab ne kaha, Qibla, Nawab Dada Sahab, इलाहाकी पाकिस्तान मेरे सियासी मंशूर का हिस्सा नहीं है. इलाहाकी पाकिस्तान मेरे ईमान का जुज़ है. The accession to Pakistan is not a slogan for me. It's an article of faith. So when you really listen to the videos, Pakistan hamara hai, hum Pakistani hai, this is not a political slogan. This was his article of faith. Ladies and gentlemen, what a prophetic prediction by Sayyid Ali Gilani. He spoke at his residence in front of more than 200 people. They were all journalists. It is reported in all the newspapers. In 2010, to be exact, October 26, 2010, what a prediction. Gilani Sahab said in 2010 that time will come when more than 500,000 Indians are going to be given the voting rights. He said Biharis are from India. Then he said the time is going to come when all the 700,000 Indian soldiers are going to get the voting rights. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't need to tell you the domicile law. Under domicile law, India has issued 4.3 million certificates. Day before yesterday, election commissioner of Kashmir, 2 days ago, he mentioned, publicly, we are going to add 2.5 million voters for next election, and they will come from all the states of India. What a prediction by Ghulam Sahab. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, let me tell you what New York Times has reported. September 2nd, 2021. Subhanallah. What a kind of courage and brave Sayyid Ali Gilani was. New York Times say that Gilani Sahab wanted to go out. The police did not let him go out. Mr. Gilani told them, please let me go out. These are the words quoted by New York Times. Please let me go out. I'm not going to fly away. I simply want to perform the funeral of Indian democracy. मुझे बाहर जाने की तो इजाजत दें, मैं कहीं भाग नहीं जाता हूं, मुझे सिर्फ हिंदुस्तान की जमहूरियत का जनाजा निकालना है. He was not talking to the man on the street. He was talking to the army in uniform. That was the courage of Gilani Sahab. So with the passing of Gilani Sahab, who was really the symbol of humanity. If you will talk to even Parvez Musharraf, may Allah give him shifa, he will tell you that Gilani Sahab was really such a kind person. He was the symbol of kindness. He was the symbol of humanity. And he was also the champion of human rights. Not only in Kashmir, he has given so many calls for the oppressed people of Palestine, for Chechnya, although Chechnya is not in the news today, and Rohingya. So may Allah bless his soul. May Allah place the soul of Gilani Sahab in Jannatul Firdaus. With that, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And you rightly pointed out that late Sayyid Ali Gilani Shah Sahab, he remained a voice of Kashmiri people and their freedom struggle even till today. So with now, I begin with my second distinguished guest speaker, Dr. Farhan Mujahid Chak. He is an associate professor of political science at Qatar University. Dr. Farhan is also Secretary General of Canadian NGO Kashmir Civitas. He has worked at the United Nations, the Canadian Parliament, and Prince Walid bin Talal Center for Muslim Christian Understanding at Georgetown University. He has authored Islam and Pakistan's Political Culture, published in 2014. Dr. Chak will share insights on the Gulf's reaction to Islamophobia and Kashmir's freedom struggle. Sir, the floor is all yours.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Thank you very much, Humaira, for organizing this, the Institute of Regional Studies, for inviting us all. And I'd like to mirror the comments of Dr. Ghulam Nabi Fai. I too am honored, and it's truly a privilege to share the space with Dr. Ghulam Nabi Fai, Dr. Mujahid Gilani, and Altaf Wani Saab, who have honestly sacrificed tremendously, and many may not even understand or appreciate the level, how each of them have sacrificed for such a long period of time for this cause. Now, when I take a look, I want to kind of make a little bit of a diversion here. On this day, we celebrate and we honor Shaheed Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani. And as was rightly and very eloquently mentioned by Dr. Ghulam Nabi Fai, a man of such charisma and dedication and courage, that his courage has rejuvenated, not only in his life, but even more so in his passing, the entire Kashmiri community and the region. I would go as far as to say the region. And what he kind of stood for, and what messages he gave, was that at all costs, we will not compromise on our right, our inalienable right of self-determination. We will resist the colonization, the militarization, and this coercive Indianization of Kashmiri society in attempts to dilute and obfuscate Kashmiri identity and culture. Now, this is what that great individual stands for. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I want to share with you a conversation I had today. Someone had messaged me and he had disputed whether or not Shaheed Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani was Shaheed. And this is the type of obscurantism, this is the type of red herring that people indulge in. And this is some of the ways that the Indian occupation continues to try to confuse people, but it's utterly failed. And I responded to the individual and I said, Sayyid Ali Shah was denied accurate medical treatment. He was under house arrest. He was bullied and harassed. Undoubtedly, that had a serious effect on his mental condition. And as anybody with any information knows, that your mental health has a direct bearing on your physical health. So in all ways and means, the Indian state is guilty of murdering through its oppressive policies, not only on the people of Kashmir, but on Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani, and then not allowing the funeral rights, which is also in contravention of the Geneva Conventions. So collectively, when I was having this discussion with this person, I said to him, there are two things possible for you: either complete ignorance, or you're a paid stooge to puppet and to mimic these false narratives to dissuade and to confuse the Kashmiri people and the world. And that's where I think, when I look at an overall appraisal of what's happened in the last few years, then those are some of the victories that we've had, in that we have seized the narrative away from India. India no longer controls that narrative, especially outside. But of course, overall, to be frank and to be honest, the situation is dismal. And it is extremely disappointing for the majority of Kashmiris where the entire revolutionary movement is today, 75 years after India began its occupation, and now it's in the process of completing it. And this is where people are resisting. As was also mentioned, I'd like to highlight that, as was mentioned by Dr. Ghulam Nabi Fai, that 4.3 million fake domicile certificates. Imagine the extent of that. They're basically inventing people, claiming they are Kashmiri. This is what India has done, by the way, consistently, and giving them the right to vote in another constituency that doesn't even belong to them. So imagine if you were to say to anybody in the world that we're going to have an election, but I'm going to bring in French people to vote in an Italian election, and I'm going to give millions of French the right to pick who's going to lead over these Italian people. It would be the joke of the century. And this is exactly how we need to kind of highlight and call it out, that this is really, India's democracy is the joke of the century. Now, another win that's been happened over the last few years is the way that the Gulf region has responded to deepening Islamophobia within India and within Kashmir. Like, I don't equate the two in whatever way possible. And I always want to make, and I encourage everyone to make this distinction clear. Kashmir is not a part of India. It has never been a part of India. And the Kashmiri people do not culturally resemble the people of India. So, nor physically for that matter. But nonetheless, these are very important distinctions. So when we talk about Islamophobia in India, it's separate for what is happening in Islamophobia in Kashmir. But nonetheless, this has resonated very deeply within the region. And for the first time, you have popular grassroots movements that are highlighting the atrocities committed. And I would say on a popular level, throughout the entire Gulf region, there is overwhelming support for the people of Kashmir. But has it been effectively harnessed? No, it has not. And there are several things that we need to do to confront this. But just for the shortage of time, I just wanted to kind of characterize that. Let's look at three factors. When we look at an appraisal of the situation, we look at three factors. We look at what's happening inside Indian occupied Kashmir. We look at what's happening inside Pakistan, because it's directly relevant. And then we look at what's happening globally. And then we can kind of dissect the globally into various categories. But to put it bluntly, inside Indian occupied Kashmir, it has never been worse. They are forcing people to carry flags. with the threat of violence, with the threat of death or seizing of, they have already started seizing properties. They have been firing all Kashmiris with and even the slightest hint of not towing an Indian line and not openly coming up and acknowledging Indian hegemony, firing them from Kashmir University. In the last 10 days, there have been 4 staged fake encounters. So inside, it's a disaster like nothing else, and complete despondency internally. In Pakistan, which is so strongly impacting, and many Kashmiris look to Pakistan, it is also a disaster. When you look at the credibility issue, when you look at the lack of legitimacy, the lack of effective authority, the floods, the economic collapse, the entire issue around the no confidence vote and this, what has happened in the last 6 months, not just Kashmiris, but the international community itself is looking very closely, and they're looking at Pakistan as the collapse of its state. And so Kashmiris feel that even more than perhaps anybody else. So when I look at that appraisal, that's also devastating. And some of the foreign policy reversals are extremely serious. The talk of normalization with India, the talk of trade, you know, this back and forth, these are serious threats to that strong majority base that is so sympathetic to Pakistan and is also has sacrificed so much. So I look at that case as the second, let's say, variable, as extremely similarly despondent with what's happening with the judiciary, the mockery of justice that's ongoing. Now, globally, there's been successes, but there's much more to do. More coordination amongst the different groups need to happen, and the diaspora needs to take a more active role in the absence of other activities. It needs to take a more forceful role and highlight, you know, World Kashmir Awareness Forum, Secretary General Dr. Ghulam Nabi Fai and Dr. Ghulam Nabi Mir, and our organization, we worked together last year on the Russell Tribunal, and we have plans for many more such activities. And these are very overwhelming, and that was very well received, but our strategy now has to be to take the movement, the revolutionary movement, outside of its cages, outside of its traditional space, into new space, whether that's in the Gulf, whether that's in Latin America, or in Africa, or in Asia. The world is our battlefield, and that's where we want to take this movement. So that's my appraisal of what has happened, where we're going, and some of the challenges that we face. So again, thank you, Humaira, for giving me this time, and sorry if I went over the limit.
Meraji, you are muted, I think.
Yeah, I think maybe we lost Humaira Iqbal, but I should be returning soon, inshallah.
It is not we lost Mera Iqbal, we lost the whole Zoom. she is the MC, mashallah.
Is that correct, Uncle? So the Zoom is closed now, huh?
No, we are still there. No, I mean, she's the MC, so that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I can see Altaf Saab there, but he is muted. So I don't know whether we are supposed to hear, because
Very well spoken, Uncle. Very well spoken. To the point.
May Allah bless you. In fact, Dr. Mir told me he had a private conversation with you. It was not private because he told me that. It became public. I think Ahmed Farukh Saab is also MC. If he can tell us what is going on.
Yeah, Farukh Saab, if you can hear us, maybe you can interject. Okay, Humaira is back.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Sorry, sir, for the internet disconnectivity. You can carry on, please.
No problem, Humaira. I just actually wrapped up, and I thanked everyone. I wanted to thank you again, and I wanted to apologize if I took more time than necessary.
No, you did not. You did not. Thank you
Okay,
so much. Sir, you rightly pointed out the humanitarian abuses and the unjust treatment that the international community has remained silent on is going on, and they really need to make an effective effort in correcting what is being wrong, and the Kashmiri and the people of the valley under siege, they should be taken care of. Thank you so much. Sir, now I move on to my distinguished speaker, Altaf Wani Saab. Thank you so much for joining us. Altaf Wani Saab is the chairman, Kashmir Institute of International Relations. He is a member of all parties Hurriyat Conference.
Altaf Wani Saab, Irshad साहब को जरा मैं इरशाद महबूब साहब जो स्कॉलर भी हैं और जम्मू कश्मीर के पेशेंट के साथ भी हैं, उनकी गिलानी साहब के साथ अकीदत भी है और गिलानी साहब अस्सलाम वालेकुम. I was in an event, so I'm leaving out to speak. Assalamu alaikum. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Hello. I'm audible?
Go ahead. You are audible. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Actually, I was in an event, so I had to rush out to speak in this event. First of all, today is the first martyrdom anniversary of our legendary leader, Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani. I must pay tribute to the legendary leader for the sacrifices he laid for this nation and the way he educated his nation about the freedom and the struggle which is carried on. I was asked to discuss about the role of youth in Kashmiri freedom struggle. In the age of youth, when the youth movements have got worldwide attention, the role of youth in socio-economic development, nation building process has world. Hello. At global level, the Kashmir dispute is one of the serious issues in the world where youth have assumed central importance by providing their best efforts to shape ideology in one or the other way. The people of Kashmir have been struggling for their rights and nation on different fronts. On each front, the youth of Kashmir are playing an active and important role. Without going of the history of the dispute, the struggle of Kashmiris for realization of rights transformation from the beginning of the dispute, I will focus on the role of Kashmiri youth from late 80s in shaping the narrative and the way in which the Kashmiri youth mobilized outside the realm of formal politics, using all traditional and non-traditional means, using new technologies and other means to bring awareness to the Kashmir issue. Despite these developments, their political agency remained restricted through increased state repression and surveillance. From late 1980s to the early 2000s, Kashmirs were embroiled in a very violent uprising between the Kashmiri youth and the Indian state. The Indian state used all its resources to suppress the uprising through direct forces, the introduction of counterinsurgency laws, and also counterinsurgency militant groups, and provided impunity to its armed forces through different laws. After 2001 to 2011, the Kashmiri people decided to change the mode of resistance and opted for a peaceful intifada to suit to international environment. But Indian state and some of the international analysts projected it return to normalcy. However, in 2008, a new wave of largely non-violent protests began to emerge in Kashmir, led by the generation that grew up during the period of bloodshed. The triggers for this new wave of protests include the Indian state's attempts to land grab, extrajudicial executions, and the torture and killing of Kashmiri youth. This new generation of youth activists have played a critical role in redefining the Kashmiris' movement for self-determination, as well as the precarious political and social conditions in which they function. Kashmiri youth today are empowered with new communication technologies that increase the movement's social and cultural outreach. These technologies expand activists' network within Kashmir, as well as linking the movement for self-determination with the global discourse of resistance ranging from Palestine to other parts of the world. Many of the Kashmiri students, due to the militarization and bloodshed, left the Kashmir, and young scholars traveled abroad for their education, either to the university or to the UK and US, while studying different social sciences and humanities. And in this process, became of their history and the Kashmir among the other decolonizing struggles. This emerging awareness has led to a blossoming young Kashmiri artists, activists, writers, journalists, filmmakers, academics that are producing political art, literature, and scholarship. The importance of this shift is best exemplified by the students' protests in the Indian universities and the seminars and other held around the globe in different universities and academic institutions around the globe. The Kashmiri youth-driven activism and cultural production has crafted a new discourse while relying on multiple concurrent frames of reference and inspiration. The activism of this new generation of Kashmiri youth points to another significant shift in Kashmir, a sphere of politics that exists outside the Kashmiri's traditional pro-freedom parties. Association with pro-freedom parties or groups means arrest, beating, death of career, and creates status conscious society like ours. And identity crisis. Middle class youth who are journalists, cartoonists, writers, academics, and human rights activists do not consciously engage with the pro-independence parties at the cost of frustration with these. But at the same time, youth of Kashmir play an important role. Parties and the leaders have played since 1980s before the difficulties they face and placed upon them by the organization has for new vision on Kashmir outside the realm of the various political parties. This has led to a broader vision of freedom struggle and first debates on the nature of the Kashmir conflict. Kashmiri youth are at the forefront of the defining and of the constituents of Azadi and challenging the long-held perspective of the role of religion, economy, culture, and education. While they connect to the feelings of being marginalized as Muslims as a result of their so-called global war on terror, these new perspectives do not simply rely on religious identification, but also incorporate critiques of imperialism, religious nationalism, and global capitalism. Despite these important developments, Kashmiri youth remain in immediate line of fire, facing violent suppression from the Indian government, affiliated with the right-wing groups and the security apparatus in Indian-occupied Kashmir. This has led to many, especially the middle class, to refrain from participating too vocally, worried about the repercussions of for themselves and their families. As I said, the Kashmiri youth are using the new technologies, as these new technologies have played a transformative role in youth activism. New technologies are also being used by various state agencies as an advanced method of invasion of surveillance. The state hires hackers to retrieve information about the youth organization online and to create fake social media accounts to troll online forums and instigate dissent in order to see who might be potential threat to the state. There's a lot of money being pumped in this area. But the moment, in this moment of high crisis, such a debate such as the dates of commemoration after killings of youth activists, and even the killing of after the death of Sayyid Ali Chak Gilani, the state calmed down on communication networks, and for weeks and times, including social media, the youth are unable to mobilize and build momentum around a particular issue. This undemocratic muzzling of expression is meant to curtail the dissent. Suppression in Kashmir goes beyond targeting youth. They are agitating against the Indian state. The entire Kashmiri student body politics is deemed suspected. Students in Kashmir have no space to organize or mobilize politically. Students groups, unless they are aligned with the politics of mainstream Indian parties such as Congress or BJP or others, are not allowed to meet in universities. As a result, Kashmir's university students has also been working underground. So the increasing suppression and the violence by the Indian state, especially since 2010 and then 5th of August 2019, we have seen that many of the Kashmiri youth who are aligned in this moment, who have resorted to the non-violent means, are highly educated because they don't see any space, any free space to express their dissent in occupied Kashmir. In conclusion, I must say Kashmiri youth are well aware of their struggle for self-determination. Of its self-determination is not of little concern, international concern. With rising authoritarianism and right-wing favor in India, the continued geopolitical interventions, Kashmir is simply not a policy priority. The perceived integrity of this issue continues, but this might create new opportunities for Kashmiris to take ownership of their cause. Kashmiri's initial revolt has come full circle, and new generation is testing new ways of dissent, taking ownership of their narrative, expanding their solidarity networks through social media and other mediums, while staying
इसके हुकूमत को हम उसी पॉलिसी को लेकर आगे बढ़े। ऐसा हम इस सब ऐसा कर सकें गिलानी को यही सबसे बड़ा कार्य होगा। आखिर में मैं कमीशन को सेक्रेटरी साहब को सारे स्टाफ हमारे पास इस
हमारे सामने वो मौजूद जिनकी यादें से गिलानी साहब के साथ नहीं है, अल्ताफ वनी साहब है, खुदा के साहब है, अब्दुल साहब है, और सारे हर शख्स जो है ना वो उनको फराजे इधर पेश करना चाह रहे हैं, लेकिन चूंकि मैं वही आपको बता दूं कि एक से ज्यादा लोगों के मुख्य हो गए और सारे उसमें गए हैं। मैं अल्ताफ वानी साहब का कार्यक्रम मैं सारे उनसे कहूँगा कि बहुत वो नाई सोच में जाने से पहले और अपने पास ग्रुप पे सैयद अली शाह गिलानी
I think there has been some connectivity issues. Thank you, sir. Altaf Wani Sahab, you have given us insight on how the new generation of the Valley have taken up the struggle of freedom by adopting new technological and creative means to convey their messages of resistance. Now I give floor to my distinguished guest speaker, Dr. Sayyid Mujahid Gilani Sahab. He is a medical physician by profession and belongs to distinguished family of late Sayyid Ali Gilani Sahab, and he's a nephew of Miss Asian Darabi as well. Dr. Gilani is also the president of Kashmir Youth Alliance. Sir, you will be giving insights on a trivial subject of role of Kashmiri women in self-determination struggle. Sir, over to you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, and really grateful for handing over the mic. The topic that I have been assigned is by itself, I believe, a magnanimous chapter of the Kashmir dynamics, and particularly of the freedom struggle that has been going on for the past, I believe, more than 100 years in the state of Jammu and Kashmir itself. So when we talk about this freedom struggle of Jammu and Kashmir right now, that is going on in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, there is one phrase that we talk about very often. And I believe it's a universal demand. It's a universal phrase, that is the right of self-determination. Every Kashmiri, no matter where the Kashmiri lives, demands for this very particular right to self-determination. And that is essentially a free, impartial, and fair plebiscite for the Kashmiris, and the Kashmiris will decide whether they are going to join Pakistan or India, or in fact, even if they wish to stay independent. But when we talk about the right to self-determination, it's part of the very a huge plethora of the human right violations that have been going on in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And India by itself has been essentially ignoring this right for the past 75 years by now. As far as my topic is concerned, I'm going to stick on to it. I'm going to, first of all, discuss a few points, some impedances that the Indian illegal occupation has in fact created for the women of Kashmir. Let us understand that the framework or the Kashmiri society has its own fabric, and the own fabric essentially denotes that the men in Kashmir go out and the women in Kashmir tend to stay inside the houses. This has been going on for the past 50, 60 or 70 years, even in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, with all the restraints and all the conflict zone that has been there. Over the past 30 years, ever since the Kashmiri freedom struggle has taken a relatively violent note, the men have been on the roads, the men have been fighting against this illegal oppression, while the women have been guarding the houses. The women are the ones who train their own kids, their children, and tell them that they're under an oppression and occupation and they need to get free from this illegal occupation. And that has been one of the prime role as a mother, as a Kashmiri mother, or in fact, even as a Kashmiri elder sister as well. But the Kashmiri woman herself has been facing a lot over the past 30 years. We have the figurative values of more than 11,000 Kashmiri women who have been molested and raped. We have the figures of more than 8,000 Kashmiri women who are now termed as the half widows. Kashmiri women who have been married to Kashmiri youth, and they don't know whether their husbands are alive or dead, but they are in fact incarcerated. Not only this, we must also talk about several other factors, the most important of which is the mental health disturbance that has taken place among the Kashmiri women over the past 10 years in particular, where we have seen a rise in PTSD, that is the post-traumatic stress disorder, to an almost of 42%, particularly in the Kashmiri women. Back in the 2016, when the Indian agencies vehemently started the braid chopping act of the Kashmiri women, this resulted in a steep rise in the PTSD, particularly among the Kashmiri women. The daily frisking, whenever a Kashmiri college girl goes to the college simply for studying, or whenever she comes back from a school or an educational institute, any of the Indian CRPF or the BSF forces tend to stop her, tend to check her, tend to examine her, and they don't let her go unless and until they don't essentially harass a Kashmiri girl. Then we have a few incidents in the Kashmiri history, like we talk about back in the 1990s on the 23rd of February, an event, a dark event, I believe, by the name of that took place in the villages of Kanan Pashpura, where more than 300 women were raped from ages of 8 to 80 years. And that happened in only one single night. This is what the Kashmiri women is facing essentially in this conflict zone of Jammu and Kashmir. Then we also know about the cultural colonialism after the 2019 upset, the 5th of August 2019, when India abrogated the Articles 35A and 370. We know that India has been trying to tell the world that everything in Kashmir is essentially normal, and that normalcy has been portrayed through Kashmiri women, coercing them into welcoming the international delegates, coercing them into singing the welcoming songs for the international delegates. And India itself has been following the path of cultural colonialism by bringing out and bringing up the poorer Kashmiri women, the poorer faction of the society, by somehow luring them into financial benefits and telling them that you have to tell the world that this is a very normal Kashmir and you are very happy under this occupation. And we have seen this cultural colonialism in the case of the father of Burhan Muzaffar Wani, who was coerced into unfurling the Indian flag on the 26th of January. That was the Republican Day of the Indian Dominion. We understand that these are the difficulties that are faced by the Kashmiri women inside the conflict zone. But then what have the women done? We are essentially indebted to these women. We are essentially indebted to the children of Kashmir who have stood up and who have actually boosted and encouraged their males, who have boosted and encouraged their elders to step up against this Indian illegal occupation. We must understand that today, if the Kashmiri freedom struggle has been going on for the past 75 years, it is because of these Kashmiri women who have not only guarded their houses, but have now also come out on the roads, on one hand being students with bags in their hands and stones in their other hands. And we have also seen them as Kashmiri mothers who have encouraged their sons and daughters to come out on the roads and speak up for their rights. We have also seen them as Kashmiri elder sisters who have been with their brothers in resisting this Indian illegal occupation. And I'm going to quote a few names now, along with a few particulars. Let us talk about Shahmali Begum. Shahmali Begum is an old age lady, the mother of Maqbool Bhatt Shaheed. Essentially, Shahmali Begum has 4 of her sons who are in this pathway. 4 of her sons who have given their lives, their blood, their time for this Kashmir cause. We must also talk about the journalists who have been working for the Kashmir cause, bringing about the real videos, the true stories of the Kashmiri sufferers. We talk about Masrad Zara. We can talk about other Kashmiri journalists, female journalists, Rovas, for example. And then we talk about the sufferers themselves, the Hyderpura killings that took place last year. We have the daughters of Altaf Wani, the girl for only 14 years of age, not only came upon the media, she essentially broke the veil of whatever the Indian agencies were saying. We now know that those Hyderpura killings were essentially fake encounters, and whatever so-called probe was being carried out by India itself. Although we understand that the Indian judiciary is essentially a tool to extend the occupation and no result will come out of it. I quoted the Kanan Pashpura incident, but we also understand that several Kashmiri women wrote a book on the Kanan Pashpura incident with the Do You Remember Kanan Pashpura back in 2011, an incident that took place back in 1993, and almost decades after it, a book was written about it, and a judicial inquiry or a probe was demanded by these very Kashmiri women who also wrote the book and authored Do You Remember Kanan Pashpura. We must also pay our homage to several other Kashmiri resistance figures, such as Insha Jan or Safura Zargar as well, who have been speaking and who have been talking about the Indian illegal occupation. And lastly, I will take the names of some of the stalwart Hurriyat leaders, some of those Kashmiri women resistance figures who have been talking vehemently against this Indian occupation. They have not only been a stalwart and an iconic figures as resistance figures, but they have also been the social reformers in this conflict zone, where the women have been essentially thrown at the back seat whenever it comes to their social rights as well. Even if it's a single seat in the bus, let me quote the names of Sayyida Asiya Andrabi, Nahida Nasreen, and Fahmida Sufi, who back in 1987 came up with a very simple agenda that the Kashmiri women need to be given their rights. And that started with their bus rights, with the seat in the bus, and not only a bus seat, they're also actually extended to avoidance of frisking, examination, and harassment by the BSF and the local Indian occupational forces. Sayyida Asya Andrabi, now the chairperson of the Doftaran-e-Millat, along with her 2 associates, are now held in New Delhi's Tihar jail. Sayyida Asya Andrabi is also known for backing up her right of self-determination. As a Kashmiri, she has been vehemently speaking about the right of self-determination, and essentially she completely ignores the Indian occupation whenever she speaks up about it. And that is why I believe the Indian so-called laws have been enforced upon her under IPC and the Rambir Penal Code, and she has been termed and dubbed as a terrorist. Every Kashmiri woman who has spoken up about the Indian illegal occupation, whether on a WhatsApp status, whether on the roads, whether unfurling a Pakistani flag, whether chanting the slogans of Azadi, has been termed as terrorist by the Indian illegal occupation over there. But today, once again, as we observe the 1st of September as the first death anniversary of the stalwart Sayyid Ali Gilani, who gave his life for the Kashmiri freedom struggle and who had sacrificed a lot, particularly for this very cause. Today, I must pay homage to the Kashmiri women as well, the people, the girls, the women who have made the males, who have made the men strong enough to go out on the roads and speak up against this very illegal occupation. And I will also quote the names of Muhammad and Ahmed, the 2 half orphans, the sons of Dr. Qasim Fakhtu and Sayyida Asya Andrabi. And this is not just one single family. There are thousands of families in Kashmir where both parents, the mother and the father, have been targeted by the Indian occupation, and their sons and daughters have been living, although with the knowledge that their parents are alive, but without their love, their care, and their proximity. This is the note where I'm going to finish my talk, that the right of self-determination has been a universal demand, but without the women of Kashmir, without the children of Kashmir, the men alone could not have taken it so far. Till 75 years today, as we understand, have completed to this right of self-determination resistance that we have shown against the Indian illegal occupation. Thank you. You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So you rightly pointed out that just like any other community under siege, it is a universal right of the Kashmiri people to demand their self-determination and to have a free choice. And the psychological impact of constantly living under a conflict zone and coercive environment are long-lasting, and it keeps on bleeding throughout the generations to come. And thank you so much once again. And since we are here with an eminent gallery of speakers, so I would ask any of the participants that if they want to ask any question to the speakers, they can go ahead. Please introduce yourself, and then we can ask a brief question.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Imran Sardar. I am a researcher here. Gilani Saab is no more, but his struggle continues. This sounds very good, but in reality, a struggle without a leadership of such stature is destined to face added challenges. So how Kashmiris, Pakistanis, and friends of Kashmir can contribute in not only keeping his legacy alive, but also taking this struggle to the ultimate level? Any panelists can comment.
I will give you to Dr. Farhan Chak, because we have been just talking about that yesterday. Dr. Farhan, are you there? Yeah, this is a very important question, but we debated at least for half an hour. Please give them the brief.
Inshallah. Okay, with your permission, Uncle Fai. Imran, what your question raises is what so many Kashmiris, both inside and outside, have been wondering for so long, that why, after 75 years, have we not been able to take the movement to its legitimate direction, or why we have not been able to achieve our targeted objectives when everything's on your side. The UN resolutions, as Uncle Fayed mentioned before, the 18 Security Council resolutions, they're on your side. Public opinion, mass public opinion is on your side. The crimes that have occurred against the women of Kashmir, as Dr. Mujahid Gilani has so eloquently articulated, that's on your side. Women's rights are on your side. We have not been able to capitalize. Now, look, I can go into great detail, and some of it would be a little bit, sakht, if I were to tell you why. But I'm going to avoid doing that. I'm going to tell you, though, that we had every opportunity to do so. It's with our own hands what we have done. It's the same thing in Pakistan today, what's happening. It's what your own hands have done. And are the people ready enough to make the choice to stand by haqq, or will they seek their personal privilege? And that's why Pakistan's in the position it's in, and this is why Kashmir has been in the position it's in. But leaving that aside, inshallah, we would like to let everybody know that we have thought this very carefully. We will, many groups actually of Kashmiris are right now planning on organizing a get together. Right now, we're not going to make this public too much. We don't want to tell too much information, but we are working on this precise thing right now to look at what has not been done. Why have we not launched a national liberation movement globally? Why don't we have these offices set up in several cities throughout the world? And these offices can then facilitate understanding and the Kashmiri narrative. So there's a lot of factors here that we recognize, and I just would like to say that there is a plan in process for how we will, inshallah, move this forward. If anything else, Dr. Fai, if you wanted to add to this, please, Bismillah.
No, I think you said it the best. So the only thing is that Imran, he raised a very important question, and it's not the question we had only yesterday or day before yesterday, but it has been in the minds of Kashmiri diaspora for the last, at least for the last 3 years. Is that Article 370-35A. But I think Kashmiri global diaspora, let me also mention, when I say Kashmiri diaspora, it does not mean the people from Indian occupied Kashmir only. It means the people from Azad Kashmir, to tell you frankly, any activity in any part of the world, 80% credit goes to the people from Azad Kashmir in London and Washington or whatever. So they have really realized that it is their responsibility under the circumstances, because when not only that our leadership has met Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but take the case of Yasir Malik. It's a matter of life and death for him. And Dr. Mujahid mentioned about Asiya Andrabi, what about Shabir Shah, what about others, and Masrat Alam. In fact, Masrat Alam, he was announced by Sayyid Ali Gilani to be his second in command, Masrat Alam, and he is also in the jail. So I think the Kashmiri diaspora, alhamdulillah, at least they have realized that this is their responsibility. And as Dr. Farhan Mujahid said, that there are a lot of people in different countries. They have come to the realization that something has to happen. As Dr. Farhan said, that it is too early to make it public, but the realization is there. And all the people here on the screen in the panel, so inshallah they will be the part of it. But the only thing is that once we meet, inshallah, and assess our past, we cannot say that there have not been mistakes. The mistakes have been made, but inshallah we will improve upon that. But if I am really allowed to say, it may be a little controversial, but it is really coming from my heart, because this was a message, may Allah bless his soul, given by Sayyid Ali Gilani to Yusuf Raza Gilani, subhanallah. Yusuf Raza Gilani was the Prime Minister of Pakistan. I was in Istanbul. I was on my way to Islamabad. I called Gilani Sahab. Wallahi, I remember it like anything. I said, Gilani Sahab, I am on my way to Islamabad. Any message? He said, no, I don't have message. If you meet a prime minister, I say, yeah, subhanallah. There's an international conference in the Muzaffarabad, and Sayyid Yusuf Gilani, he is the keynote speaker, and I am the guest speaker, he's the keynote speaker, and I will talk to him. These are his words. Please, wallahi, I am not making any complaint. I am just conveying the message of the iconic leader to the Prime Minister of Pakistan, because he was the Prime Minister of Pakistan. उसने मुझे कश्मीर में कहा, let me translate that into Urdu. उसने कहा कि गिलानी साहब से कहे, मैं तो कश्मीर में इलाहा की पाकिस्तान का सिंबल हूँ, लेकिन मुझे कोई दूसरा आदमी नहीं मिल रहा है कि जो मेरे साथ हाँ में हाँ मिलाए, क्योंकि आपकी पॉलिसी सुबह एक होती है और शाम को दूसरी होती है. And this is exactly what I told Yusuf Gilani in Muzaffarabad. What I am saying that Kashmiri people, wallahi, we have no words. If I will quote to say really Gilani, we have no words to thank the people of Pakistan. They have sacrificed for us. But at the same time, we really would like to give the message to the government of Pakistan, please don't dilute. Can you believe it? Sadar Masood Khan Sahab, when he was the president of Azad Kashmir, and he was on Zoom, and Dr. Farhan Chak was also there at least 3 times. He said, we must have BDS. You know what does BDS mean? We must boycott the Indian goods in every part of the world. Said Masood Khan Sahab. And now I am hearing that you are going to have a trade with India. So please, for God's sake, don't dilute the Kashmir cause. So Pakistan has to realize Pakistan is a very important part of this conflict. And we have to realize that without our sacrifices, without our selflessness, so the Kashmiri cause cannot be propagated properly.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other question? Okay, with this, I would like the floor to be given to Ambassador Nadeem Riaz, President IRS, to give his note of thanks.
Thank you, Humaira. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, and a good afternoon and a good morning to all my worthy speakers in different parts of the world. It was really fascinating listening to all of you. The conversation was so full of emotions. It was so full of history. We spoke about self-determination. And yes, you know, Dr. Ghulam Nabi Fai, you really put it correctly that, you know, self-determination is something which is there. It is guaranteed by UN resolutions. Nobody can take it away. I mean, what the Security Council gives, it only has the power to take it back. You just can't unilaterally say that it's not there. So self-determination is extremely important. The worthy speakers spoke so eloquently about what is going on in Kashmir. You know, after the Indian revocation of 370, the domiciles which are being given out to the people, nobody knows their exact number. We feel that there are more than 4 million. There could be much more. But like, you know, what would it lead to? Like, you know, in my humble opinion, it would lead to a complete change of demography for electoral purposes, which is not really the change of the demography in real. So, you know, these are the things which one has to be cognizant of, and one has to make the world cognizant of what is going on in Kashmir right now. Today, I think is a sad day also. It's a sad day because a great personality left us a year ago. Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani needs no introduction. There are a few words which I would like to, which I feel, in my opinion, depict his personality. He was a symbol of humanity. He was kind. He was compassionate. He was a champion of human rights. He was proud of the Kashmiri people. He was a visionary. He was clear-headed. He was honest. He believed in self-determination. He lived by it. He died by it. He was sincere. He was a fighter through and through. And he was not at all open to giving up his stance. He was incorruptible. That is what Ghulam Nabi Fai said. And sir, I know that you have a great association with Gilani sir. And you know, these were some of the words which came to my mind when I wanted to talk about him. Now let's move on. The Kashmiri struggle has been going on for over 7 decades. It's there. It will be there till the time it reaches its logical conclusion. And that logical conclusion, I don't think there should be any illusions in the minds of all of us. What is the logical conclusion? Women, children, men, they have sacrificed. They continue to sacrifice. The role of youth, their new approach to resistance, the women educating. When I use the word educating, because you learn things from home, and if from home you are told that like you are being occupied, I think that is very important because it translates into the life of the people. Yes, the Indian government is trying to basically shut the voices of people. Kashmir is referred to as the open prison, where rights of people, especially the Kashmiris, are trampled with impunity. Rape, forced disappearances, searching, harassment, taking away the basic human rights and liberties. It's all part and parcel of the game from the Indian side. And what is the future? In my opinion, at least, there are a number of unanswered questions, but the struggle for Kashmir will continue. It will continue, and the people, the diaspora, and it was rightly pointed out that it's not only the diaspora from the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, it's also the diaspora from Azad Kashmir, the diaspora from Pakistan. They raised their voices for the Kashmiris. Obviously, I think more needs to be done. I think a new approach has to be adopted. But the main thing is that the UN Security Council resolutions, they still are there. So we have to support our Kashmiri brothers and sisters. The last question which Imran asked, what's the future? I honestly don't feel, because people like the stature of Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani are not born every day. It may take very long time to have a leader with such qualities. But the main thing is that the message which the leader has left, the message which is with the Kashmiris, which is in their hearts and minds, I think that is very important. And that is what makes all the difference. These are my thoughts. And I hope all of you agree with at least some of them. My special thanks to my speakers from different parts of the world. I really enjoyed listening to all of you. I could feel the passion. And I think the passion is something which drives all of us when we talk about Kashmir. Thank you very much. Over to you, Humaira.
Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. And with this, I thank all the worthy speakers for giving us an intellectual insights into understanding the ongoing situation of Kashmir, which has become a symbol of resistance against the inhumane conduct carried out for decades. Rightly said by the President IRS, the struggle will keep on continuing till their voices are heard, as every sacrifice counts. So once again, thank you so much to the worthy panelists for joining us and educating us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.